So, again, if we get into the 2004 period, there was this period of crackdown of people like Omid getting arrested. And the Iranian government itself became much smarter about what it was doing and how it was responding to internet access. In 2000, even before blogging and all of this, in 2000 I believe was the very first time that the Iranian government responded, to use military terms, had a kinetic response to something that was happening online. So they had a real world effect of something that was happening online, which was that at the time there was a dissident Ayatollah, a guy named Ayatollah Montazeri, who passed away a couple of years ago. He was considered to be a reformist Ayatollah. He had been part of the original founding of the government and later broke from them and was kept under house arrest for the remaining 20, 25 years, 30 years of his life, and broke with the government during the 80s. In 2000, he published on his website, which was montazeri, with an I.com, he published a 600-page manifesto detailing why he didn't like what the government had done during the Iran-Iraq War and all of the atrocities that the government had committed and all kinds of other things. So what did the Iranian government do? They purchased the domain, montazeri, with a Y.com, and basically tried to fake people out. They tried to cyber squat his website and fool people into going to the wrong website and, tricking people, essentially. It didn't really work. I don't think that many people were fooled, but I think it shows a level of sophistication that the Iranian government is definitely aware of what's going on. I just wanted to mention that because I had forgot it to say it earlier, so I apologize. By the time we get to the later and mid-2000s, as more and more Iranians come online, the Iranian filtration system starts to get more and more sophisticated. And all kinds of websites continue to be filtered. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Deutsche Welle Persian, BBC Persian, Voice of America, all kinds of things. In fact, just this week, the United States Department of State opened up what it was calling a virtual embassy, and with apologies to our colleagues from the Department of State, it was blocked by the Iranian government the day it was turned on, which I believe was yesterday or 2 days ago. And for anyone who's followed the Iranian government's activities, this was not a surprise that they would block it. Of course, there are ways, there are technical means to get around the blocks, and some people do that. But not everybody is aware of how that works and how to protect themselves online. So, so this is something that we have to kind of deal with and fully understand. By the time we get to more recent times, after all of these people who've been arrested and many of these people who worked for this online magazine Cappuccino, nearly all of them live now in the UK and France and Canada and the US. Like a generation of people before them, like my father's generation, people who have basically decided that Iran has no hope for them. Many people have been kicked out by choice or by force from continuing to be and live and work in Iran, which I think people would prefer to live in a free country if that existed for Iran in that way. By the time we get to more recent times, I think that the level of Iranian activity with respect to the internet is getting even more interesting, even after the protests and such that we saw from 2009. How many people have heard of Stuxnet? Okay, half the room. So Stuxnet was a computer virus, a computer worm, a piece of malware that was believed to have been created, apologies to the State Department, by the American military intelligence and also the Israeli military intelligence. This was reported by the New York Times some months ago. This was a virus that was released into the wild and specifically targeted Iranian nuclear facilities in Iran. This was a very intelligent piece of malware, if you will. So malware, of course, are these viruses you probably get in your email sometimes, and it tells you to click on something that looks weird and sketchy, and hopefully your email filter takes care of it. Don't download those things, they're bad. But so this was a piece of malware, and it was designed specifically with a particular target in mind, which was Siemens hardware, so German-made hardware, running at nuclear facilities inside of Iran, and it was specifically targeted to do those things. It was specifically designed to make the machines in the nuclear facility spin out of control and essentially break. If you had it on your computer, it wouldn't do anything because it wasn't set up to harm anything else besides that. Stuxnet was actually discovered by a computer researcher right here in Hamburg, a guy called Ralph Launer, who studies these things. And he figured out and announced to the world that this is what it was and this is what it does. And so the computer science and computer security world has been talking about this for the last year and a bit. This is really interesting because this is the first time that a weapon of this nature, some people have called it a weapon, has been designed for the purposes of sabotage of real-world things. And one can imagine if the situation were reversed, if Iran had released some kind of cyber weapon in this way against the United States or against Germany, people would not be very happy. Iran, since that time, has given a lot of speeches. Some of them have been very silly. You've had some Iranian officials who've said things like that they want to ban all viruses from the country. Don't know how that's going to work out. You have other officials that have said they're going to ban people from using VPNs. These are virtual private networks that allow people to have encrypted connections to other countries. Slightly less silly. You have other people who are saying that they're going to create something called the halal internet. I don't know what that is, but good luck with that. You have other officials who've said that they're going to beef up the Iranian graduate cybersecurity, cyber defense programs, so master's and PhD programs in Iran about cyber defense and cybersecurity. And it's not a great big leap of logic to suggest that these students are going to be taught not only how to defend against these types of weapons, but how to make weapons of their own. So it may not be long before people in other countries, governments in other countries, militaries in other countries are becoming targets of these types of weapons. And this kind of cat and mouse game continues as we go forward, particularly in the aftermath of the election, particularly as not only weapons like Stuxnet get developed and deployed. You have, again, our colleagues from the State Department, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, over the last few years especially, and in fact this week in The Hague, I believe today, she gave a speech in The Hague on the topic of internet freedom. And again, this is something that I think we all, generally speaking, agree on, that it's good for people to speak freely on the internet. Unfortunately, our friends and colleagues in other countries like Iran don't allow that, and there continue to be speeches and ideas and people promoting these types of values, which I think is a good thing. But I guess I have questions about how this actually works in practice beyond Secretary Clinton giving speeches. She's a very good speaker, but it'll be interesting to see how this pans out with respect to not only things like Stuxnet, but other types of programs. One other program that is being developed by the United States, this is public information that was published in the New York Times, again, earlier this year, is a project that's called Internet in a Suitcase, right? And this is exactly what it sounds like. It's somebody walking into Iran or China or North Korea or Gaddafi's Libya or wherever, and setting up, using a satellite internet connection and a local Wi-Fi network, a free internet access point. That sounds great, but what happens when somebody shows up in Tehran and is caught with this little internet in a suitcase? The US right now is spending millions of dollars on this program and other programs like it. And the Iranian government knows this. So what do we do? I don't really know. I don't have a good answer. I think that for me, I was having conversations with people about this earlier. I'm a big science fiction fan. I love Star Trek and other science fiction. Anybody watch the X-Files or used to watch the X-Files? Okay. You may remember if you watch the X-Files, it's like an iconic thing in the X-Files. Fox Mulder, the lead FBI character, had a poster that said, "I want to believe." You may remember this from X-Files? Yeah. So that's how I feel about the power of the internet / technology to change authoritarian countries. I want to believe that that's true. I really do. When I first started working on this book, I would have argued that. But as I've done more research, as I've interviewed lots of people, as I've traveled to these countries, and seen examples of filters and surveillance and all these kinds of things, and cases that are just, cases of countries that are just internet black holes, like North Korea, but also cases where internet access is very, very high, like China, that continues to block and filter the internet. There are more Chinese people online right now than there are Americans in the world. So, that's kind of interesting. What I'm trying to say is I want to believe that as we get more and more people on the internet, that necessarily leads to democracy and free speech and all of those good values that give us warm and fuzzy feelings. But I just don't see it. I don't see, with 35% internet penetration in Iran and more in China, we still have authoritarian governments. And that doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon. That being said, we've seen in this past year dramatic changes in the Middle East, in Libya and Egypt and Tunisia, and hopefully maybe in Syria and other places. 20 years ago, we saw that in the Soviet Union, and these types of changes can happen out of nowhere. And so it's hard to predict when and where these types of things will happen. But I personally am just very, very skeptical that the internet necessarily will lead to that. If you go back and you read some of the history and some of the rhetoric from the development and the spread of the telegraph 100 years ago, there's a really cool book, it's one of my favorite books about technology, called The Victorian Internet. It's written by a British journalist. It talks about the history of the telegraph, and you'll see that a lot of the same hopes and dreams and rhetoric that was used about the telegraph then, 150 years ago, is similar to what we talk about now. People talked about how the world will come together in peace, harmony, and concord, and war will go away, and everything will be cool, and that didn't really work out. So I think I will pause here, and I really thank you very much for paying attention and listening so attentively and sharing your week with me, and I would like to open it up to questions, so thank you.